Imagine walking past an ordinary post office on 63rd Street in Chicago, unaware that beneath your feet was once the scene of one of the most gruesome crimes in American history. This is not a fairy tale or a horror novel, but the bloody truth about H. Holmes, America's first recorded serial killer who turned a building into the perfect killing machine. This story is not only about heinous crimes, but also a profound lesson about human nature, about how modern society can create monsters, and about the fragility of the veneer of civilization we believe protects us. As we delve deeper into Holmes's psyche, we discover dark secrets about human nature that we probably never want to face. Herman Webster Mudgett, born on May 16, 1801, in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, was no ordinary child. From a modern psychological perspective, we can see that signs of antisocial personality disorder began to appear very early. What is particularly interesting is how a seemingly terrifying event, being forced to confront a human skeleton in a doctor's office, became an inspiration rather than a trauma. This is what psychologists call a paradoxical response, when an individual does not respond in the usual way to frightening stimuli. Instead, Holmes felt excited, even happy. This suggests that his nervous system was programmed differently from a very early age, either due to genetic factors or deep psychological experiences that we cannot know about. However, one must be cautious about the famous quote attributed to Holmes, "I was born with the devil in me." As research has shown, this was a fabrication of the press at the time. This reflects another important aspect of the case, the way the media turned Holmes into a legend, sometimes obscuring the truth, which was actually more terrifying than the fiction. Chicago in the 1890s was a city in rapid change. Its population had grown from 503,185 in 1880 to 1,099,850 in 1890. And by the time of the World's Fair, more than 40% of the population was immigrants. These were ideal conditions for a predator like Holmes to operate. From a sociological perspective, we can see that Holmes took advantage of the gaps in the social structure. In a crowded city where people do not know each other, where thousands of people disappear without anyone asking questions, Holmes can act as a successful businessman during the day and become an assassin at night without anyone suspecting. This raises an important question. Are our modern megacities creating similar conditions? When we live in apartment buildings without knowing our neighbors, when we interact with hundreds of people every day, but don't really see them, are we creating spaces for the next predator? The three-story building at the corner of Wallace and 63rd Street was not just an architectural construct, but the physical manifestation of Holmes's diseased mind. The fact that he kept changing contractors so that no one could fully understand the design revealed a terrifying level of calculation and planning. However, modern research has shown that many of the building's horrifying features were exaggerated by the sensationalist press. This does not mean that Holmes was any less terrifying. On the contrary, it shows that the truth about him was terrifying enough without embellishment. From a psychological perspective, Holmes's creation of hidden spaces can be understood as an extension of his mind. Rooms without doors, doors that lead nowhere, all reflect the disorder and abnormality in the way he perceives the world. This is a building designed not for living, but for killing. When we talk about Holmes, we often focus so much on him that we forget about the real people who lost their lives. Emily Van Tassel, a teenage girl who worked in Holmes's candy store and only met him 4 times before he disappeared. Julia and Pearl Connor, the jewelers. Emmeline Segrand, Holmes's secretary. These people are not statistics, but individuals with dreams, hopes, and loved ones. What is particularly heartbreaking is the way Holmes took advantage of the trust of women in an era when they had little power and protection. He not only killed them, but erased their very identities, leaving them as disappeared people that no one would seek. From a modern perspective, we can see that Holmes used tactics that we would today call manipulation and grooming. He built relationships of trust, created dependence, and then exploited that trust to satisfy his own sick desires. The ironic thing is that Holmes, a killer so sophisticated that he could disappear people without anyone noticing, was caught for a relatively simple insurance scam. His murder of Benjamin Pitezel and Pitezel's 3 children shows that greed made him lose his prudence. This is an important lesson in criminal psychology. Even the most sophisticated killers have weaknesses, often due to an oversized ego or excessive greed. Holmes believed he could control everything, but ultimately underestimated the abilities of the police and the randomness of life. Detective Frank Geyer, who tracked Holmes across several states, represented a new kind of investigation, one based on patience, meticulousness, and the rudimentary science of the time. His work laid the foundation for the modern investigative methods we use today. During his trial, Holmes displayed typical narcissistic traits. He attempted to defend himself, demonstrating control and superior intellect. Even in the face of death, he maintained a calm exterior, even joking with the prison guards. Holmes's final statement on the gallows is a final testament to his coldness and calculation. Even as he is dying, he attempts to control the narrative, denying the crimes he had previously confessed to. This is not remorse or fear, but a final act of manipulation. The story of H. Holmes is not only a story about crime in the past, but also a mirror for modern society. In today's world, when we are increasingly distant from each other, when technology allows us to create fake identities more easily than ever, are we creating the conditions for new Holmes social media dating apps, and online platforms have created new spaces for predators to operate in? Just as Holmes used the chaos of 19th century Chicago, modern predators can use the information chaos of the 21st century. At the same time, the story also shows the importance of building community and real relationships. Holmes's victims are often lonely people, isolated from family and friends. In the modern world, where we live more and more isolated lives, this becomes especially relevant. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about Holmes is not the crimes he committed, but the way he was able to live as a normal person in society. He was able to work, marry, run businesses, and interact with hundreds of people without anyone suspecting anything. This raises a difficult question. How many Holmes are living among us without us knowing? Modern psychology shows that severe personality disorders like Holmes's are not as rare as we think. The difference is that not everyone has the opportunity or the means to commit such crimes. Society laws and social structures play an important role in controlling these behaviors. The Holmes story is also an important lesson in how the media can distort the truth. The newspapers of the time fabricated gruesome details to attract readers, creating a Holmes legend that was far from the truth. This had profound consequences. Not only did it obscure the truth, but it also created a template for future killers who wanted to be famous. In this age of fake news and information overload, we need to be especially careful about distinguishing between fact and fiction. Holmes's story shows that sometimes the truth is terrible enough without adding anything extra. The Holmes case also marked a turning point in American judicial history. It was one of the first cases to require cooperation between law enforcement agencies in different states. Detective Frank Geyer's work laid the foundation for the federal investigative methods we use today. The lack of modern scientific tools, such as DNA testing, fingerprinting, or blood typing, has made the investigation much more difficult. However, this also shows the importance of patience, meticulousness, and logical thinking in investigative work. Holmes has become a cultural icon featured in countless books, films, and television shows. This reflects our fascination with evil, with stories about serial killers. But we need to ask ourselves, is this fascination glorifying violence? From a social psychological perspective, Our interest in such stories can be understood as a way for us to confront our deepest fears. By learning about Holmes, we may feel that we are more knowledgeable about evil and therefore better able to protect ourselves from it. H. Holmes's story is not only a tale of the past, but also a warning for the present and the future. It reminds us that evil can exist under the most ordinary of appearances, that society and technology can create conditions for predators to operate, and that we must always be vigilant. But most importantly, it reminds us of the importance of building community, of caring for one another, and of not making anyone invisible in society. Holmes's victims have been forgotten not only in their deaths, but also in how we tell their stories. We owe it to them and potential future victims to learn from this tragedy. Holmes died more than a century ago, but the lessons of his story still apply. In an increasingly complex and interconnected world, we need to remember that it is our responsibility to protect each other. Because in the end, the only thing that can stop the next Holmes is not technology or laws, but genuine human connection and caring. And perhaps this is the most important lesson we can learn from this dark tale. In a world of predators, our most powerful weapons are not guns or locks, but connection and caring for each other. Because when we truly see and care for each other, people like Holmes can no longer hide in the shadows.